Chapter 6 Lecture on Process Flow Analysis. So, process flow analysis is used to discover better methods for producing and delivering a product or a service. How is that done? It really maps out every step in the process, even steps that you may not even realize are in place. You may have a process that has modified over a period of months or even years, and people don't even realize what's happening. It's just, we'll add this, and then a little bit later on we add this thing, and it may not be necessary, it may be necessary. So what you do with the process flow analysis is that you literally sit down with the people producing it and say, you do this, oh, you're doing this, okay, what's the next thing, and then this, okay, then what's after that, and you literally walk through the entire process, documenting every single step and even monitoring how long it takes to do each step. Then what you're doing is you're saying, do we need all these steps, or why are we doing this here as well as here? It's redundant, so you may be able to remove stuff and improve the methods as well as the cost of providing a service or a product. And when we talk about process flow charting, it can improve job design. Job design is, what is it that this person is supposed to do? And it's not just people working in a factory setting, it's people working in offices and services. Why is it that you do this? When do you do this? And let's try to design it and then decide how much to pay you based on what you are required and expected to do. These symbols are different than what we see in chapter 13, and it's just different. People come up with different sorts of symbols. So we select a supplier flow chart, and so it can, again, they say they start here. The buyer receives a request to buy. Then there's a question, and if the question is no, is the information correct? No, it goes back to start, which makes no sense. There should be another step in there, like contact the customer to get more information. This is not, otherwise you just get into this endless loop. So sometimes these flowcharts don't make a lot of sense, but the idea is that there are things you do, you make decisions, you go from there to there and progress. Some flowcharts get more and more complicated as you go. This one should have had a decision tree on it rather than doing it this way. It should have been qualified, and it would have pointed this way and this way. So not always a great one, but they can be literally pages and pages long. Some are almost like a wall in a room, a small wall in a room, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet in some cases. Of course, that's a very complex process. Again, different processing, different types of flow charting. There's a complaint process. Again, this is just generic ones, and what do you do about it and how you progress. This one is interesting in that there's something wrong with it. It's okay, they start, the customer calls, the telephone rings, which seems to be a little redundant. You assume that the telephone's going to ring. It's not really a step, it necessarily needs to be captured. But the customer waits in queue. Does the customer hang up? If it's yes, and really most of the time you put yes and no here so you know which way to go. You receive the customer call, etc. If it's no, customer is not served, there should be some sort of retrieval process so that if the customer calls and you don't get to them, you should be able to figure out who they are and call them back. So it should be some sort of a remediation step here, not just say, they hung up, we just lost a customer, so what, let's just go on. No, you don't do it that way. I like this flow chart. It's so true. So here's this flow chart, and you say, well, what's wrong with this? And the flow is not a bad thing, but it's kind of funny because there's a pretty good chance that the quality assurance department created this flowchart, and look what they did. They spelled QA department, which means they put an extra E in there, so you'd expect that to be right, and especially before they published it. And again, you could create a flowchart such as whether you begin and continue to be in a relationship with someone else or not. Okay. Basic principles of creating a flowchart is you want to specify the boundaries of the transformation process. This is what we're going to map out in terms of our flowchart. Why do you have to have boundaries? Because you don't want to keep going on and on and on and on and on. It could be miles long. You say, okay, let's go back to the relationship thing. It's like, well, should I go out with this person? Well, then you say, well, okay, this particular person, do I go out with, do I ask this person to go out with me, or do I go out with this person? Yes, you say that may be the start of it, but what happens if you don't specify a boundary? You say, well, that was really predicated on me breaking up with this other person that was I had went out with 4 months ago, and then I also had done some dating before that, off and on, with nothing serious, and so but then I also need to track maybe the boundary of the person I'm asking out. What was their past relationship history? That should be included too. And so again, it just snowballs out of control. So you say, this is what we're looking at. We're not going to exceed these boundaries. Let's just focus on this. Process flow improvement types by goal. You can reduce throughput time. You can reduce throughput time, the time it takes for a product or a service to process through the facility. Okay, starts, ends. And the faster you can process it, theoretically, the less money you have tied up in inventory and people paying people, and the more quickly, hopefully, you'll be paid. So you reduce throughput time. How? Because you're eliminating unnecessary steps in the process so you can finish sooner. There's a bunch of questions you could ask. A bunch of other about that. And that is a relatively short chapter, and this concludes it.